The battle was getting desperate. Paldea had just lost a major war against Kalos, and now they were losing against Galar as well, right after their war with Kalos. It was not looking good. And then, all of a sudden, Galar pulled back its forces. Those horrible, horrible dogs, those Pokemon, they were gone. And they left behind something. Pieces of their armor seemed to have fallen off from the battle. The people of Paldea didn't know it yet, but their fighting spirit to hold off on this war against Galar until they had retreated for some unknown reason, it had grown into a Pokemon. It had taken a life of its own. And this armor that had been left behind by these incredible Pokemon, the Cyan one and the Magenta one, it seemed that this would become much more important in Paldea's future too, and shape two of the most iconic Paldean Pokemon. What's going on, guys? I'm Zach from the Lumios Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and today I'm bringing another massive theory about Paldea, but this isn't so much about the region. That's definitely included, but instead actually comes more so about two of the newer revealed Pokemon, Ceruledge and Armarouge. Now, these Pokemon are already beloved, and if you pay attention to the details given on the site, Ceruledge deals much more with swordsmanship. You know, it's got its swords for hands, and it's even has a signature move that involves its swords, while Armarouge is much more dealt with its armor. You know, its special move, its signature move, actually causes it to have to take some of its armor and make it into a cannon. So it seems one is much more focused on the offensive and specifically swords, and one is much more focused on the defensive, specifically armor, shields, and the whatnot. That reminded me of something, and I realized, is that not a very similar detail to the legendary Pokemon of Galar, Zacian, and Zamazenta? These Pokemon, of course, they're brother and sister, and Zacian is more swords and stuff, hence it being the legendary Pokemon of Pokemon Sword, and Zamazenta being much more focused on shields, being completely covered in armor, hence it being the legendary of Pokemon Shield. So what I'm proposing is that while we know that the Armarouge and Ceruledge got their armor from some kind of old ancient armor, so it's not theirs, they're not born with it. This isn't like a B-sharp thing where they just have armor on, it's something they get. What I'm proposing is that they actually get fallen pieces of armor from Zacian and Zamazenta, perhaps even from a war way back long ago. Now, you may be thinking, I know that that's not all you're basing this off of. You're not just saying they have swords and they have shields. I guess they're related to Aegislash too. Well, while there potentially could be a theory there as well, that's not what I'm proposing. There's much more similarities. You know, you have Ceruledge and Zacian on one side, and you have Zamazenta and Armarouge on the other. So let's look at Ceruledge and Zacian first. Zacian, like I said, deals more with swords, and Ceruledge, of course, more with swords. Zacian has a more bluer color to it, and Ceruledge has a more bluer purple, which is kind of more on the blue side, color to it as well. It's a cooler color, you know. And not only that, but Zacian, its name actually comes from cyan, you know, the color, a blue color. And Ceruledge, its name also comes from a color, cerulean. Again, a very cooler, more bluer color. Furthermore, Zacian is, while it doesn't have a gender in terms of game coding, it is said in the Pokedex to be the sister to Zamazenta. So it is clarified to be a girl, at least in lore. Ceruledge also seems to be more feminine, as it has a more feminine figure than Armarouge, and, you know, has more of a bust. But all of this just seemed a little too coincidental. And when you look on the other side, you have Zamazenta and Armarouge. Again, both deal with shields, and armor, but also Zamazenta's name comes from magenta, and of course it has red in its design. Armarouge, same thing, red in its design, and part of its name comes from rouge, which is French for red, if I'm not mistaken. It's definitely a color in the redder side of the color spectrum. So this just seems like too much, right? There's a lot of coincidences here. Oh, and then there's also the fact that Armarouge and Zamazenta are both more masculine, with Zamazenta said to be the brother of Zacian, making him a male, and Armarouge has more male armor and not the feminine, slender figure of Ceruledge. Well, that answers, okay, yeah, there's some similarities here, but how could Zamazenta and Zacian's armor come to be in the possession of Armarouge and Ceruledge? Well, while not confirmed, it is pretty likely that Paldea could be relatively close in proximity to Galar, just like how in the real world Spain isn't too far from the real world UK. So they're very close to each other, and unfortunately, when you're neighbors in history, you usually end up going to war with each other at some point or another. So it's very likely that Paldea and Galar could have been at war at some point. And what I'd like to propose is that Paldea and Galar went to war right after Paldea had a war with Kalos, which, you know, is where AZ would have fired the ultimate weapon. It's the great war we hear about in Kalos. I have a whole theory on how it's Paldea they hit, which you can check out in the top right corner if you would like to do that. And right before the Darkest Day happened, you see, the Darkest Day is said to happen 3,000 years before the events of Sword and Shield, and the ultimate weapon happened, you know, the first firing of it happened 3,000 years before X and Y. X and Y, I am going to assume, it takes place in the timeline just a little bit, just a few years, definitely no more than a decade before Sword and Shield. So if you go 3,000 years back from that, there would be about a 10-year difference between the firing of the ultimate weapon and the Darkest Day. So what I'm proposing is, after this big war with Kalos, Paldea ends up in a war with Galar. And obviously they just lost a huge war against Kalos. They don't have the resources to win another war. But their fighting spirit ends up actually becoming so fiery, it takes a life of its own. It becomes a Pokemon. You may be like, that's the cheesiest thing I've ever heard. But I remind you, the Pokemon world is one where dolls come to life, letters come to life, and, well, dolls specifically come to life when they're really, really mad at their owner who abandoned it. So why can't fiery fighting spirit come to life as well? Their fiery fighting spirit came to life so much, it became a Pokemon. And meanwhile, the Darkest Day causes Galar to have to pull out of Paldea. They do. Zacian and Zamazenta retreat. But in battle, you're going to have some chips in your armor. You're going to, lose some armor. There's going to be some casualties. We even see in Zacian's regular form, it seems to have part of its ear missing. So what I'm proposing is some of its armor was lost or chipped or damaged and resides in Paldea. And maybe even Zamazenta had its own army and Zacian had its own army, and all of their armors kind of just got lost in the mix. And this armor is the armor we hear mentioned in Ceruledge and Armarouge's kind of, not dex entries, but synopsis that we get of them on the Pokemon website. So Ceruledge talks about how it's got a bunch of bitter souls mixed up in it. These could very likely be the souls of those who were killed by the Sword of Zacian or its army. Armarouge, its ancient armor that it picks up, is the same armor and shields that Zamazenta and its army used to defend themselves from Paldea's attacks. And this caused them, this fiery fighting spirit Pokemon, when it would pick up these armors, it would become Armarouge if it was the Zacian or the Zamazenta armor, or Ceruledge if it was the Zacian armor. This would also explain why, this armor's mystical. We know that from Sword and Shield, because it allows Zamazenta and Zacian to pick up a type and take on a new form. So this armor's so mystical, it allows this Pokemon to kind of take on a new form. In Armarouge's case, a more masculine form with armor that it can move to create basically a Pulseman cannon. And in Ceruledge's case, it allows it to become more feminine, as it was the armor of Zacian, and get swords for hands and become much better with swordsman work. And of course, Ceruledge picks up that ghost typing because of the fallen soldiers that died at the hands of the swords of Zacian and its army. And Armarouge picks up the psychic typing because, well, I guess maybe there's something mystical about the armor, like I said, and that could indeed tie into the psychic typing. So yeah, I know this is kind of one of the more tinfoil hat type theories, but I just feel like there's so much similarities between Ceruledge, Armarouge, and the legendary Pokemon of Galar. So be sure to let me know what you think in the comments below. Is this just absolute crackpot theory? Is there anything here? Could they somehow be related to Zacian and Zamazenta? Again, let me know in the comments below your thoughts. And be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. We do a ton of theories on this channel. We're going to do a ton more. And, you can stay for the ride. You don't want to miss it. Subscribe, hit the bell, and like. Until next time, I will see all of you later.